Hi, I'm Sug.
I'm Dan.
This is the Demystified Zone.
A podcast about North Korea. This is one of two things my mom disapproves of. The other one is my wife.
Dan,
Yeah.
you ever been in like a fight like with your wife where it went on like so long or intense that you forgot what you're fighting about?
And I'm being completely honest here. My wife and I very rarely fight. So
Really?
yeah.
Really?
I'm serious. Yeah, we really genuinely get along, and the biggest fight that we had lasted like 2 hours, and literally that was the only time we raised our voices at each other.
How high? What volume were you at?
I'd say something like this. And to this day,
how high was she?
Yeah,
I can't imagine Betty getting that high. Come on. She did not get that high with you.
She did, and to this day, my kids talk about it like it was like the worst thing. I'm like,
oh no!
Like
They were there.
No idea.
They were
They
there.
sado everything
For the shouting match of the century. Dan and Betty.
That's like their trauma right there. I'm like,
Do you remember what you guys were fighting about?
it was something really dumb. Like I had a meeting that was going a little long, and she had to wait for me, but the kids were really young. And
It's always something dumb.
yeah, it was always something. Yeah, exactly.
When is a fight ever not? When is there a marriage fight that's about like critical things happening in the world right now? Like you guys ever like people are dying right now, and the refugees in North Korea need me. I guess that you could have said that if it was work related.
She definitely
You didn't
would
throw
not
that
buy
one out
that.
there?
No, yeah, she's too smart for that. She's much smarter than me.
She is. You can't mess with a woman that's smarter than you.
Yeah.
And then raise your voice like that. You probably got put in your place that night.
Yeah.
How long did it take for you to come groveling back and apologizing with your face?
I was
on the
like,
floor?
I was so mad that I'm just gonna stay in a hotel this week. And
Did you actually do it?
So I went to the
That's bad. That's hard when you gotta leave physically.
Yeah. And then I went to the hotel. I'm like, man, I don't want to spend that money.
You actually went to the hotel?
Yeah. So they told
And you were like asking for a room?
Yeah, they told me how much. I'm like, man, I don't want to spend. I'm just gonna. You know what? I'm just gonna.
And then you went back and apologized.
It was so dumb. It was so dumb.
But you remember, actually. So you did remember what you guys fought about.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. What about you? Do you
Not with my wife. No.
Yeah.
We definitely have our fights, but I don't think I've ever yelled. It's just very like intense energy in the room. Like the plants are like wilting and the lights are flickering. Like we give off
they're definitely
some intense auras.
Yeah, for sure.
There's like a spiritual warfare happening in the room that we're just there.
Yeah, the language is a little bit more cutting and.
Do you remember? Did you ever watch the movie Hero with Jet Li?
No.
It's the one with all the swords and then he fights Donnie Yen in their minds. That's what it is between. They're like sitting there. They're like playing chess. It's raining. Do you remember this scene in Hero?
I never saw it.
I love that movie. You go watch it. Everyone should watch it. But there's a scene where him and Donnie Yen sitting across each other in the rain in this like Chinese chess kind of outdoor thing, and they're fighting each other in their minds.
Oh wow!
And then the cinematography shows them actually fighting, but the whole time they're in their minds.
They're in their mind, and
that is how I fight with my wife.
If it's the battle of the minds, I'd have to put my money on your wife.
Yeah, I'm definitely Donnie Yen in that scene. Spoiler alert: he loses to Jet Li. I bring this up obviously because this is a great segue, of course, into the two Koreas, North versus South, who have been fighting now. How many years is that now? 70 It's in the 1950s. So Korean War was 1950, 1953. So literally they've been fighting since 1953, which is almost 70 years now.
Yeah.
69 years, 70 years next year.
And even before that, things were not great between them either.
That's true. That's more of like the actual...
The lead up. Yeah.
Yep. So I wanted to talk about this today because I think many Korean Americans such as myself, I hope I'm not alone in this, don't really know much about the separation. Why are we divided, or why did North and South divide? We all have our own stories, I think. We all know about the Korean War, obviously, but like the nitty gritty behind it and what, it's such, you know what it is? Especially like, I mean, I was born in the 80s, so war was 30 years past. Our parents all were our grandparents were either in the war or definitely were affected by it in some major way. Our parents were definitely affected because of the aftermath of the war, if not because of the war. For some of our parents, they probably were in the army. Some of them were too young.
So, crazy war story. Can I tell you my family's? Because this is why I'm here today.
Okay.
My dad was born in 1945. So when the war started, he was 5 years old. And he got some sort of infection or disease where he was about to die. He was literally about to die. And he needed penicillin.
Okay.
But, during the war, man, you just couldn't have access to it. And he said he was laying down and he was about to die. His mom was crying. And my uncle was in the Korean army. My dad is much younger than his brothers. He's the sixth of 7 kids. And my uncle stole penicillin from the U.S. Army.
Okay.
Brought it to my dad, and that's how he survived, and that's how I'm alive today.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
Thank you, America. And I don't joke about that.
Yeah.
Because, all right, here's my war story, which is not really a war story.
Yeah.
But I remember, I didn't know anything. First of all, okay, no knock on my dad and my mom, but my dad used to say, like, I grew up thinking he fought in the Korean War, which he would have been 5 years old as well. But if you live in a Korean household, they're not very good with details about talking.
Yes.
They talk about their time in Kunde, which is the army, but everyone had to be in the army after that because of that war.
Yeah.
But they were far removed from that war. And really, they just went through boot camp for most of them. And maybe some of them were stationed. But anyway, I grew up with this thinking of my dad being in the Korean War, not understanding the Korean War was well before even the Vietnam War. But I do remember a point of pride. It was like I heard this from several stories where grandfathers of friends would, on Veterans Day, if they were in the Korean War, wear the Korean uniform in America here. And when they would see other veterans, American veterans who were also old and wearing their uniform, they would see each other and then they would like smile or hug each other. They would like definitely recognize when they saw the uniform. And I remember hearing a story of a friend's grandfather. I'm going to mess the details up, but basically telling me when he saw me, he was like, it's like, I have so much respect for the Koreans in that war.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, this is probably not suitable information for a child at the time, now I think about it, but he was like, whenever we need information from one of those North guys, we would just put them in the room with the South guys.
Oh, wow.
And we would get it. And then I'll be like,
As a 5-year-old.
Yeah, as like a 8-year-old. I'm hearing that. Oh, I was like so proud. Like, yeah.
So they tickled him?
Yeah, we're really good at tickle torturing those North guys. No, but then I remember just hearing stories like that. And then similar were like, I remember a friend told me that like his grandfather was walking to the airport and he saw a veteran, a U.S. American veteran, and he like broke down crying and like went up to and thanked him, like similar for your dad, like thank you for coming, you saved my town.
Wow.
You know, he didn't know the guy, but then that was like a point of connection. Which, again, I love that. I love those stories.
Whenever I see someone, an old man with a Korea War hat,
Yes.
I make it a point to try to thank them.
Yeah.
I don't always get to, but I make it a point and I tell them that I'm Korean and
Yes.
I owe everything to them.
And there's not many of them left. I mean, that was 70 years ago.
70 years ago.
And those guys, if they're young GIs, were 20s.
Yeah.
So they're, in the near 100. So that generation's almost gone, which, again,
very sad.
Sad, but yes, so many good things came from that war. And this is going to get...
It's so complicated.
It's complicated. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
It's so complicated.
So let's get into for those who don't know, Korea was one before there was no North, there was no South.
Yes.
Right. And from my understanding of history.com, which I just went to the website and was reading up on, and Wikipedia obviously too, the war was a result of the Cold War between the US and the Soviets.
Yes.
And not only that, it was the right mix. It wasn't just them. Already there was a communist faction within Korea that was predominantly north. If you guys don't know, Pyongyang and Seoul are really close to each other.
Very, very close.
A thin line that divides the north capital and the south capital.
Yeah.
So there was definitely political rivalry happening between Korea on the verge, it was an impoverished country, colonized rather by Japan for so long. Now having some sovereignty of its own, but having to choose between two forms of government, basically communism and democracy.
Yeah.
In our last podcast, we now have two democracies, North and South. But that's another one. So anyone who doesn't know, so what happened was, and I'm reading straight from Professor Emeritus of East Asian Studies and History at Indiana University, Michael Robinson. Basically, the catalyzing incident is the decision that was made really without the Koreans involved.
Yes.
Between the Soviet Union and the United States to divide Korea into two occupation zones, each of which represented the backing nation's ruling values or governing values. So basically, Soviet Union were communists, Americans were a democracy, and because they backed the South Americans and the Soviets backed the North, each took its kind of form from there.
Yes. Because it was at the end of World War II when that happened. And, it was from, it's so complicated, but to simplify it, it was in order to stop the fighting, right? Because after the Nazis were defeated, then the Soviets and the Americans or the Allies could have turned on each other as well. No one wanted that. And so they were like, okay, you get this, I get this, and let's just leave each other alone. But that never happened either.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Korea was the kind of the was the victim of, for lack of a better term, I'm missing the word right now, but of that two dominant nations.
Yeah. Sure.
Jarring for position in this Cold War.
But Germany as well was divided. And,
exactly. Right. West Germany. I remember that. Yeah. Anyway, I want to just read this too. So Michael Robinson goes on and says, the ultimate objective for the Soviet Union and the United States was to leave and to let the Koreans figure it out. But the trouble was that the Cold War intervened.
Yes.
And everything was tried to create a middle ground or to try to reunify the peninsula. Everything was thwarted by both Soviet and U.S. Parties not wanting to give in to one another. Yeah. So really, Korea was this kind of it's interesting. It's almost like the Korean War was a microcosm of the U.S.-Soviet war that would never happened.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. Yeah,
a proxy war.
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy to me when I think about that, because it was literally that. They're fighting for democracy versus communism, backed by these two countries that don't want to go to war with each other and don't want to back down in this one nation, which is Korea, and therefore have their war through the Koreans.
I mean, to bring it back to today, if war were to ever break out on the Korean Peninsula, it would be very similar, except it's between the U.S. and China now, right? There is simmering tensions between the U.S. and China now, and it would, in essence, be a proxy war between China and the U.S. It's like a couple who is fighting, and the real issue is like love, right? But then it breaks out into like someone's driving style or something, and that's what the fight is. But really, yeah. And doesn't that make you sad? Like that?
No, it does.
Yeah, that
it makes me really sad.
We're in the middle of it. We're the kids in the middle. Right?
We are. Well, not us specifically, but yes, our country, our homeland. It is, and it's like it brings me back. Like it's like you said, complicated. I have the mixed feeling of I really appreciate, and I think about like my dad appreciating, my grandfather appreciating the American GIs who were there.
Absolutely.
Kept South Korea safe. And from what I don't have enough information or I don't know, opinion maybe on it, but like I think for a good cause of like it was a fight for democracy in Korea. Yeah. Over not even communism. I mean, it turned into a democracy eventually, but more of a dictatorship democracy, which it is today, which is like no form of other government resembles North Korea now. No. It's its own thing, which also makes me sad because the Soviets just left them like with not much to model, whereas South Korea modeled itself after the U.S. Or other European nations. However, I will say this. I'm going to read this again. This is the third quote. It's like the Korean War, which was from 1950 to 1953, killed at least 2.5 million people, most who were Korean, North Korean to that fact.
Oh, really? Most of the casualties were in the north?
I think so because, well, you'll hear why. So like it did little to resolve the question, which regime represented true Korea. So it had no effect to help Korea in itself. However, it did establish firmly that the U.S. as a permanent, I don't know what this word is, bête noire of North Korea. So basically a permanent enemy, basically, of North Korea. As the U.S. military bombed villages, towns, and cities across the northern half of the peninsula, like leveling populations, basically. I think that's why it's mostly North Koreans were. I mean, the U.S. won that war, if you want to call that winning. But that's the part that's hard for me to like think about and like be supportive of the U.S. It's like, yes, I understand you came in, you protected my family in South Korea, but actually I have family in both, or from as far as I know, I had family in North Korea as well. We all did at some point. But
if they didn't do that,
yes, exactly. If they didn't, what would be the
communism would have taken over, and we would have those crazy haircuts right now in North Korea.
But would it have? I don't know if it would. I mean, that would make for an interesting series, a multiverse series here. But like, it's hard to say because at least by this, I don't know the true political what was happening. I'm sure that's a very likely outcome, right? That the Soviets would have funded the guerrilla party of Kim Il Sung, and then they would have taken over Seoul. I think President Ri was the South Korean first president.
Syngman Rhee. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. It's weird. There he is, Syngman Rhee. Yes. I don't know. I don't know what would have happened, but I do know what happened. Like, what we do know, right, is like this. This is how it turned out, obviously. But even today now, like, the cost was like North Korea is North Korea. Today. Yeah. Like, I wonder. Okay, here's the the brain messer upper. What if we didn't get involved, and Korea did become a communist nation, and they were just communists, right? But they're not crazy North Korea today. They're a normal functioning, somewhat normal, almost akin to China, functioning communist nation.
Because they didn't,
would that be better than what it is today, which is an oppressive dictatorship hermit kingdom that doesn't? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, doesn't that mess with your head a little bit? I've been thinking about this, and I don't know. It's a rock and a hard place, right?
Right.
And obviously a lot of speculation.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to game that out, to think about those things, because another thing is that with the Soviet-backed North, right? North Korea was economically and militarily protected, right, by the Soviet Union.
That was okay before they. After they separated into the 38th parallel.
Right. Okay. So because of that, because they were under the blanket of coverage, basically by Soviet nukes, they felt the security. And when that went away, that's when North Korea started their nuclear program, right? Because they're like, oh my gosh, we're naked. No one's here to support us. We need to get a nuke.
Yeah.
Right. And so the whole situation brought on all of their current troubles. Right. And so to say it's good or bad, or every country, right? Like we live in a country where I'm sure you feel the same way. I'm so thankful for the freedoms that I have.
Yeah.
But as an adult, I don't have this romanticized view of my country anymore. I appreciate where I'm at. It's much better than other situations. But yeah, of course, we're not angels as well, right? And we have to, and as an adult, you have to hold these two things in your hand. It's a very complicated history. Yeah.
It is. And all I can do is speculate. Is what I do best and hypothesize. Because I wonder, I truly do wonder, like, what if it just became a communist nation? The Soviets no longer offer protection. They start their own nuclear program. Or I don't know who would have won that war even. That's assuming that Kim Il-sung would have won with that revolution that he had. So many ways it could have played out. You know what I mean? Like, democracy could have prevailed. Who knows? If Soviets really didn't care about the country itself, just the fact that the U.S. was involved. Right? That's a big assumption. Because the Soviets did not take that. From what I understand, they weren't necessarily doing that to get a foothold in this part of the world where they're now strategically positioned to set more nukes.
They just wanted to.
They wanted to just go after the U.S., who was involving themselves here as well. Yeah, who got in their business basically. Right? It was all like Cold War politics. From what I understand. I could be wrong about that, but let's just say that's the truth.
So you're saying perhaps North Korea today would be more like Vietnam, right? Because there was another bloody conflict in Vietnam.
Yes.
Between North communist, South democracy.
Exactly. That's a great example.
Communists won, basically, kicked out the U.S., right? And there was a lot of suffering after that. But now, as that country has market ties and things like that, the situation is much better than North Korea.
And the U.S. was involved in like really mess things up there.
Oh yeah,
but I'm just saying. Yes, exactly. That's the closest example, at least the one that I know of, that could be a potential outcome, right, of a different Korea. But then again, would we be here then? That's the big question: is would we be here? Yeah. If all that goes down.
Yeah, man.
It's mind blowing.
Why are you making me think so much?
Based on your story, you would not. Your dad wouldn't have gotten the penicillin.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been here.
Oh my! Yeah. I've been doing this podcast by myself. I've been doing it with Mike. Mike and I would be here, and we'd be like,
just dogging on the capitalists, outsiders. Yeah. It's wow. I never even thought about that. It might have become more like Vietnam.
Yeah,
North Korea.
We don't know, but
Korea. Yeah.
All I did and I guess what we have to wrestle with now is, like I said in the beginning, like, apart from crossing borders in their ministry, I had very little knowledge to zero knowledge of what actually goes, except for news, what's going on with North Korea. Having been more involved now in research and learning about North Korea, it like blows my mind every time. And I'm still surprised that I get surprised, and that there is just nothing out there in this world right now that is like they are one of a kind.
One of one.
One of one. They're the most limited edition version of themselves that they'll ever be.
Yeah,
for better, worse, or different.
I think one of the differentiating factors of North Korea today, and perhaps North Korea if they won the Korean War, is the Kim dynasty and the Koreanness of how militant they were about what they believed, right? Because you grew up in the church.
Yeah.
I grew up in the church. I still attend church and consider myself a believer. But man, looking back on some of those people I grew up with, it was like a different level of, like a militant level of Christianity. And I will say this, like that is also part of Korean history. Like Confucianism started in China.
Yeah.
But when it got to Korea, the Chinese Confucians were like, oh man, you guys need to settle down here, right? It's always like the Koreans just kicking it up a notch. And right?
We're really principled people.
I don't know what it is about us,
principled.
right? Once we get a hold of something, it's just like you need to suffer for it and da 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 da. That's the same. That's what the Kim dynasty has been all about.
The Han.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. It's that chip on our shoulder. It's that burning desire for revenge. I don't know. Like with them in charge, I don't know if things would be different because
that's if they got in charge, right? Like if the things went the way they went for them.
But if Kim Il Sung led that,
sure. If the communists won in that, yes, we would North Korea today, maybe worse.
yeah, that's an interesting
with no
question.
Samsung,
with no definitely
or LG,
or Hyundai, or
none of that,
or Psy.
That's who you're mourning for. The loss of Psy.
The loss of Psy.
Not BTS or Squid Games.
Ooh, yeah.
But no, for sure. You're right. If Kim Il Sung, who was leading the revolution at the time, and supposedly was very good at guerrilla tactics and war tactics, is why was like the military commander. If they won,
then he
maybe
would
we have
still come to power.
I don't know though. So even if he did, and as I wonder if the psychosis of his mind, and I agree, Koreans take things to level 30 when it comes to certain things, but even in that, like, they would have more sovereignty earlier on. It's because they had the chip, they had the Napoleon complex early on, where like Russia left them, the U.S. is bullying them, so now they're like, I got to do my thing.
That's true. That's sort of.
But then if they had sovereignty early on, like Vietnam just took over the whole country's the communists now.
Right.
They have like.
And they were
imports,
allowed,
exports.
Right,
they're making external. Now they have like a normal trading relationship with China, Soviets, Asia, even. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're probably developing nukes. They probably would have nukes right now, and they would just be one of the other nations that carries a nuke, and hopefully they sign that nuclear agreement.
Definitely.
I mean, they would have to have.
I agree with you. The Koreanness of North Korea would still be there, probably, but it was like that lump of coal did get turned into a diamond under the pressure of U.S. military presence, not only in South Korea, but right over in Japan as well.
Yeah.
Right. Reinforcements right in Japan, patrolling the waters right outside the Korean peninsula always has been a very strong and heavy U.S. presence. So maybe we made them crazy. We made the leadership. We forced them into this elevated Koreanness.
It's like a Dragon Ball Z when they hit like, you ever watch Dragon Ball Z?
No, you make all these references that I'll just nod and say
Super Saiyan 3 or like the God Saiyan mode. That's what we hit.
Yeah. No, that's
someone out there for sure is laughing right now at that joke.
You always say that.
And they totally get it. They totally get me right now because they're like, yes, I get what he's saying.
Yeah.
Kim Il Sung and the Kim family hit Super Saiyan level 3.
Yeah. And
of Koreanness.
Yeah, and maybe that
Not in a
would
good
not
way.
have happened. But okay, so for example, right after the Korean War, Syngman-rhee, it was basically a military dictatorship. Yes, it was. It was a democratic process for sure, and it was more democratic. But those major economic and political reforms came in the 80s, right? And so our cousins, if you ask them, how did you grow up? We had to write these essays about how great our leaders were, just like North Korea.
Yeah.
The same thing was happening on the other side, right? And my dad would tell me all kinds of stories.
Korean history books are pretty whack. You ever read an old Korean history book? They'll tell you like Korea was the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Basically Wakanda of Asia.
Right.
Which is not true.
So
if you didn't know.
That was happening without any of the pressures that North Korea felt.
Sure.
Right. So yeah, I don't know. It would be a very interesting what if to explore for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. Crazy.
What if you were to go back? Let's just say.
Okay.
Let's just go into
go back in
hypothetical.
time. Time
machine.
machine. Okay.
Back in time.
In the DeLorean.
In the DeLorean.
Okay.
All right. And let's just put it here, like U.S. and Soviets are about to get involved.
Yeah.
You see, though, a chance. You see a chance. Syngman-rhee in democracy has a chance. What are you going to do? You're going to go after Kim Il-sung? You're going to see how things play out?
Are you asking me if I would assassinate Syngman-rhee?
No, I'm just asking you. Let's go back into that time, and you have a position as a time-traveling future man. You have an opportunity to change the course of the future, but you only get one move. What are you going for?
This is what I would do. I would find my parents in high school. I would go to their dance, and I'd play "Go Johnny Go." Johnny,
your mom
be
falls
good.
in love with you? Is that what you're gonna? Is that thing that you're going? You're gonna bring the penicillin to your dad, and your mom falls in love with you?
I'm just saying. I just bring my guitar along with me, okay, and we'll take it from there.
You clearly did not watch the sequels to that movie.
I did.
When you mess around with the space-time continuum.
That's true. Yeah. The tangential.
I'm disappointed that you would spend it on such selfish things.
This is the thing, right? There are all these scenarios, right? Like, what would you do if you were locked in a room with Kim Jong-un
Sure.
for an hour?
Yeah.
And I'd say 10 years ago, I would say I would beat him up really bad.
Wow.
But now, as I'm older, I wouldn't do that. I would just let the authorities, the powers that be, handle it. Who am I to get involved in history or to take matters into my own hand? That is the job and the role of the people. And honestly, I would not, if I were locked in a room with Kim Jong-un for an hour, I'd ask him about the bulls. I'd just, try to convince him to change his ways, and I would leave it to the UN to handle that situation. So going back, I don't know. I wouldn't want to get involved. Sorry to.
I'm just going to make sure we don't send you back.
You're not going to be a
time-traveling
back, okay?
time cop, okay? No, Jean-Claude Van Damme, we're going to send him back. Korean version of it. Who's the Korean version of Jean-Claude Van Damme that we can time cop him back to that? The mission of Crossing Borders is to show the compassion of Christ to North Korean refugees and their children. This mission depends on the generosity of people like you. If you'd like to make a real impact in the lives of North Korean refugees, please consider donating. It's super easy. Just go to our website at crossingbordersnk.org and click on the donate button in the upper right.